Today we're going really back in time to a place that we've got lots of documented evidence that goes back even to Viking times. But we've got something that's come up recently to show us an interesting dispute that happened in this area. So my main thing today is to look for evidence of that dispute in the first decade of the 1800s, but also to give you a little bit of insight to more about this area. So whereabouts are we? We're near Catley Lane. We're at the bottom of Rooley Moor Road, where East Lancashire kind of meets South Lancashire really. Smallshire, that's the place we are, and we're looking for something specific today, but this is the home of Viking thanes and Norman lords. There's also the stomping ground of the Byrons. They owned this land, and even the poet Lord Byron, he owned this land that we've alluded to in another video. So we're going to give you some background on a really famous road as well, and try and get deeper into the history of that road. And that's really come into prominence on the scene, so come on. I hope you enjoy today's story as we go hunting for a story back from around about 1802 thereabouts. Well, we've had a fantastic weekend in Lytham, where we've met up with a really old friend of this channel, a colliery surveyor who now is kind of retired, but he isn't retired. He did an awful lot up at Apton Valley and Grindbridge and helped us out no end of ale. And from there we've come on this lovely, fantastic warm day across to Rochdale and into one of our favourite places, looking up Rooley Moor Road. And this is where we're going to be at Catley Lane Head and the Smallshire Dam, which was used latterly, well now actually it's used for fishing. It's great, it's still being used, but it was used for Smallshire Mill, which was owned by the Tweedales. But, and this is a big but, it goes back much further than that. The history of the Rooley Moor Collieries on the Rochdale side has been a lot more, well, it's more of a mystery. But we've got these two dams here. Can you see them? And this is Hunger Hill. So we'll come back to that later on. But it's these two dams, and they're connected by an old water lead. Can you see it's running down here? Now, yes, that was used for Smallshire Mill, owned by the Tweedales, which was down in the valley. But originally, these water leads were used for coal mining. And we're going back to the first decade of the 1800s, possibly to the Lomaxes. Now all this land originally, obviously it was owned by Queen Elizabeth, but it was rented by the Byrons and fell into the hands of the poet Byron. He was the last Byron to own it. But in the 1790s, the mineral rights were bought by Deardens, who became Lord of the Manor, and their right-hand men, the Lomaxes, and this is their stomping ground. So they built a series of dams. They worked coal up in this area. This is where the telegraph poles come across. It's hard to see today, but when it comes September, October, we'll get Desi up and we'll find all these shafts. And we've got a map now that shows us these shafts and also the names of the shafts on it. And it shows us and brings to light a dispute that we never knew of down in this area. Because the Lomaxes and the Deardens were working the coal, but freeholders had the rights on the fringes, and it looks like there's a right royal battle going on. So we're going to get closer on the ground. And we're going to get down and look for the old colliery, and we're going to look for an old waterloose which is down along the Smallshire Brook here that runs down towards the river Spoden down here. Can we find it? Well, I'm not going to tell you. But anyway, it's quite exciting, and we're going to follow it up, obviously, with much more in-depth review of when the Lomaxes ran Rooley Moor Collieries. But we're also going to talk about this road what's known these days as the Cotton Famine Road. And as you can see, we can see it from outer space. Alright, maybe not that far up, but its history is far more intriguing and far more important than the 1860s and the cotton famine. So come on, let's get on the ground and have a look. So behind me, I'm keep speaking quiet because you've got people fishing here. Behind me is the dam from Smallshire Mill, owned by the Tweedales. I think that's how you pronounce it. But before that, there was a water lead here and some dams for working coal, and this is what I'm sort of going to try and look for today. Traces that water lead, a water loose, and the actual workings. They're going to be hard to find, and we're trying to investigate something that occurred, I say, after 1802, where the lessees who leased this colliery were in a bit of a battle with people who had freehold rights to mine coal, and they were sort of like digging leaks and sending water down each other's shaft, tunnelling into each other's workings and letting water into their workings as well. It looks like it was quite intriguing. It's a new thing to us, and we're not being able to find out anything else about it. So today is an initial sort of exploration. Behind me, behind the dam, you can just see in the background where Rooley Moor Road was, and that is the famous road that we're going to be looking into as well. So here we have Rooley Moor Colliery. We're not sure of the date. It's after 1802, and we think it's the first decade of the 19th century. So let's give you some geographical sort of information. This is Catley Lane Head. We think, is it King something Bridge there? And Smallshire Farm. And Rooley Moor Road there, the bottom of Rooley Moor Road as it's called today, going up there. So the actual working colliery is here, where it says it's got the little B. And this water lead here is bringing water down to drive a water wheel to actually wind coal for the lessees. And we're under the impression it is the Lomaxes that are leasing the colliery at the time. Now, the freeholders, we've come back, we've got to go back to this. This patch there is worked by the freeholders. There's other places as well up near Naden Head and Naden Dean and further towards Bagdon. But they've got a shaft here at F, and that is them working. So what's going on? Well, obviously they must have permission on another map that we shall look at. So the lessees, the Lomaxes are working here. They've driven a water loose, a water level, which is driven to take water away off the coal, and it's coming out there at A into the river. We'll show you that. The lessees have taken a water lead away from here and started pouring water down the freeholder's shaft. Yeah, that causes big problems when you're trying to work a pit. So what the freeholders have done is drive a tunnel underground and haul into the lessees' workings. That's the lessees' new shaft at E. And they're now sending the water into the lessees' workings. That's what's happening there. And obviously the water is travelling out. So there's a right old royal battle going on. There we are. There's a little close up. There's Smallshire Farm, as we can see it. And this is now obviously under the bigger dam that was used for Smallshire Mill. This is the winding shaft. So all those water leads and dams were originally built for the collieries. And these are all the old pits by the lessees. Look, water pit, crop pit, little pit, basket pit, second crop pit, first crop pit. And these are all sort of like, they're there, you can still see them, but we need to wait till the back end to get Desi up and have a right good look at them. And they continue right up onto Rooley Moor. So you can see all the ancient sort of stuff that's been going on back in the old days. So I've superimposed this the best that I possibly can, which is the old plan on top of the 1840 map. And yeah, I might have got a few things wrong, so let's just bring it up. Now this is the freeholders pit here. This is the dam. The new pit that they've sunk there, E. And this is the working colliery. We can see the water leak coming down here, B, and that one there is the actual working colliery, and down to the water loose entrance down here. So this is what the lessees are working, and this is where the freeholders are at. So if I just fade out a little bit, we can see that the old colliery is actually under the dam, and the entrance to the water level is there. You see, it is below the footbridge, or just thereabouts. There's a footbridge there. So I was in the wrong place. So it's this shaft that we're looking for now, isn't it? And the dam, you can see, is nowhere near as big. It's on the edge of this one, just about here. So we need to look for that shaft and that shaft. I think we might have found that one, but I'm not sure about that. So let's see if we can track it down, shall we? So here we are. Let's bring it in again. We're looking for this shaft and this shaft here. Now, are these surveys, certainly this colliery plan, how accurate is it? But anyway, there we are. We've got an idea where it is, and let's have a look. It's showing it just below there. Now, there is a shaft just above, which is where I'm kind of standing as I'm talking. Let's have a look at that. It's in this area here. This is where I'm stood talking later on in the video, and we've got what it looks like the lessee shaft down here. So let's just open it up to LiDAR. This is, and we can see an old shaft down there, and this scar coming down. I did notice that scar when I was up there, although it shows it as a road on the map. That is where the other shaft is, where the shaft marker is all concreted in. But look, we've definitely got an old shaft there. So is that the lessees, and this is the freeholders, and maybe the two surveys don't fully match up? That's interesting, isn't it? See, here we are. There, look, there's that shaft depression, and up here there is the trig marker with the big concreted in shaft, and look, we can see that big scar coming down. Now that's interesting. We need to get back on the ground the next time I go down and see if I can find that. So let's have a look at the original survey as the manner is as it's bought off Byron. The problem is we do have lots of information about different land ownership, but we haven't got a comprehensive jigsaw, if you know what I mean. And that is the problem. So this is a map of Shore Moor or Rooley Moor. Right, why is it called Rooley Moor or Rooley Moor? Because Mr. Rowley ended up buying the place that became the Moorcock pub, and he was called Rowley. So Shore Moor took on his name, Rooley Moor. And here we can see the top end of what is Shore Moor. It's interesting, it shows catstones out here towards Ding, Nadenhead, and on the plan of the colliery we've got, it shows them encroaching and the freeholders working at Nadenhead and Nadendene. As we can see, that is actually on the border of Shore Moor and Rooley Moor's, what they would have got the coal rights for. And here we've got the bottom end of that. So Snipe Barn, that's where we're looking at. And Smallshire, Catley Lane. This is the area where the freeholders are working. And they're obviously encroaching into the area that the Lomaxes have, that they've leased. And obviously Hunger Hill. So that's got Rooley Moor Road coming up. So we can see the disputed area all around here. That interesting, isn't it? So now we've established where the pit was, or an approximate area, let's go and try and find that water loose that the lessees had driven to try and drain the coal. It's down by the river, and we've been along this path before with Stu Mend. You've got this wonderful old farm behind us with the mullion windows and what have you. But I don't know if we can get down to the river or not, but we're going to have a try. So we've come down the footpath from Smallshire Farm, and this footpath actually goes down to Healy Dell, to Healy Hall Mill, and we're actually on the footbridge that kind of goes down to Ely Hall Mill. Now if we follow this path, that's where it'll take us. So what we need to find out is which direction. So if I look on our map, right, the footbridge means that we need to go back in this direction upstream, and it kind of looks a bit precarious going up there, but that's where the water level is, if we can find it. So I'm not promising anything. You'll know if we get there. Well, I've walked right up to the head of the little brook where there is a barrel culvert actually, but I think that's what's coming out of from the dam under Smallshire that's been tipped in. There is a wall here that looks like it could have been a boundary wall at some point. Well, there's nothing so far that I've seen that's obvious. There's no car water, there's no pit muck, but maybe it's a bit lower down towards the bridge. It does show another, like a brook coming down on the Ordnance Survey map, and I've passed that, but it doesn't show that on the document that we have. But it's in that general vicinity, so I'll have a look back down there, and if anybody's up here and finds some sunglasses, they're mine. This area behind me sort of shouts this could be a locality. See, with the trees there, and just to the next of it, like some fallen ground, but it does look like it's gone in a little bit. I can't say for sure, but we're looking at candidates here, aren't we? And we're looking over 200 years ago as well. We'll have a closer look. But maybe not, who knows. We'll go further down now towards where the other little brook comes down, and this is the area sort of up from where that other little brook is. And the river, when you look on the old maps, it looks reasonably straight with reasonably uniform turns, but in reality that isn't the case. And this is where the other little brook comes down, as you can see. This is the joint. Now I said the only signs of a bit of car water actually are in this little brook. Looking at it now, there's quite a bit actually. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? But we're at the joining of the two now, and behind on the Smallshire Brook there is a little bit of a waterfall, a bit of a weir they've built. Now could the Waterloos have come out there? Let's have a look. Kind of coming out that bank side there, pretty strong. Well, we seem to have drawn a bit of a blank, but like I said, it's 200 years and it's the sort of land that slips and moves. Now we're just below the footbridge, you can see it behind me. And there's the first bit of car water I've seen on this side of the brook, but it could just be coming out the strata. It might pay us to come back when all this foliage is gone in the winter time or the back end. But there is a bit of car water here. It's either coming out of an old loose or it's just leaching out the strata. So this is the most likely location of those two shafts then, which date from just after 1802. We don't have a better date. It looks like it's the first decade of the 19th century there. And it looks now, in all intents and purposes, like the dam is where the shafts were, or they're perhaps just to the side. It's so difficult to know for sure. But where the mill is, there's a massive dip down to there. But it's obvious they're going to reuse this, the water leak that came to drive the water for winding the shafts for the mill. That's why the mill dam is now here. So we know nothing about the shafts, how deep they were, how long they worked, but at least we know at one point Rooley Moor Colliery was here, and these shafts were sunk by the lessees. Now who were the lessees? We'll talk about that. We don't know for sure, but we do have a good idea. So we can follow this water leak back to the bottom of Unger Hill to see where it sort of started and look at the battle that was kind of going on between the lessees at that time and those who were the freeholders. We don't know who they were. So we'll go back up onto Rooley Moor Road, across towards Unger Hill to where the dam was that supplied this mill lodge, which previous to that was for the pit. And behind us, up on Rooley Moor Road, if we look where you can see the pylons coming past, I don't know if the white balance will show you that, but that is where the pit had been. They've been working shafts up there. Both the lessees and the freeholders have been in there around about Snipe Barn. So let's see if we can get there as well. So like the notice board said about Rooley Moor Road and the cotton famine and the 1860s, but you know, it's great that it's getting a lot of notoriety is the wrong word, but getting a lot of airplay, both nationally and internationally because of that event. But Rooley Moor Road goes beyond that. It shouldn't really be defined by that one decade in history. So how far can we go back with Rooley Moor Road? We don't know. Probably 1,000 years. So let's go back as far as we possibly can with the area. We're over there, we've got Brownwardle Hill, and there we've got Knoll Hill, which is a funny fireman-shaped helmet bump that sticks up a bit like Musbury Tor. And on top of there's Viking barrows, burial grounds, same on top of Scout Moor. And also, there's things going back to that same time on the top of Brownwardle Hill. So how far can we take the road back? Well, let's have a look for a start back at Rochdale, round about the time of the conquest, and it's in the Domesday Book. Now, let me be able to pronounce this right. Was it Reked Hammond or something like that? Something similar, that we find it in the Domesday Book. And it was kind of run by a Viking thane by the name of Gamel, whose estates went a long way. He actually had a seat in Elland, but his lands were all over Rochdale and they went as far as Cliviger. Now Gamel, that Viking thane, had a son, talking about Cliviger, and his name apparently was Orm. Now, this is interesting, may or may not be true. A measurement of land is called a rod, and Orm took land right in the Cliviger Valley at the end of the manor, if you will, and made a clearing and made that his home, or made that a settlement. So we get Orm's Rod. And the name Ormrod, which is a surname very popular in the area, most of it can be traced from that area of Cliviger. Now then, isn't that interesting that it goes back possibly to Viking times? And then on the Cliviger boundary, as we go to higher booths over towards what is now Cloudbridge or Gambleside, now old surveys call that Gamelside. Again, isn't that interesting? But let's get back to Rochdale. So the first Norman sort of owner was a man called Robert de Portico or something like that, who built Lancaster Castle as well. And then the lands passed to Roger de Lacy. And this is where it starts to get interesting, certainly for the Rossendale side. Now I want to say for a start that this, all over Rooley Moor Road, right down into what is present day Stacksteads, up past Bacup and into top of Shineyford and even into Todmorden, was Rochdale, or the Manor of Scotland. Now in the late 1100s, part of the land on what we'd now call the Rossendale side was gifted to the monks of Stainlaw Abbey. Now Stainlaw Abbey was down near Ellesmere Port. It was on the Wirral Estuary. And it got flooded a few times. It got inundated by the sea. And in the 1200s, it kind of closed. And the monastical sort of operations went to Whalley. And Whalley became the ecclesiastical centre of the area at that time, including Rochdale. And that's where it gets quite interesting, where we get our first valuable bit of information on Rooley Moor Road, particularly right on the summit, just going down into the Stackstead side, what's now today known as Old Sink Slack, or in those days, if I can get it right, Garcilac. I hope I've pronounced that right. I'm sure Bill will put me right on that. But that was gifted to the monks of Whalley Abbey, well, Stainlaw then, and it included Garcilac right down through what we know today as Cowp, down through to full Bacup, or Bacup, and then right up Shineyford to Salter's Gate. And Salter's Gate was the main road that brought salt in from Cheshire into the Lancashire and Yorkshire area. From there, which we think is the top of what is now Limer's Gate, right on the top of Shiny Ford. And then it came back down to Deansgreave and all the way up the hill, back again to Old St Slack or Gorsilac. So those lands were held by Whalley Abbey, and you can read all about it, if you can read the books, in the Whalley Coucher books that talk about all the different charters or leases and grants given by the monks of Whalley Abbey. Now the main product was wool, and the administration centre was in Whalley, and one of the big markets was Rochdale, and the two needed to be joined. And Rooley Moor Road is a prime candidate for joining those two areas, straight across from Whalley down into the centre of Rochdale here. Is that where Rooley Moor comes from, or does it even date back further, even to Roman times? We don't know. Here we can see part of the leat, the head of the leat really, from the dams that were up here that, yeah, latterly they fed Smallshire Mill, but first they were used to power the winding at that early Rooley Moor colliery. And where we are, we're at the bottom of Hunger Hill. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the history of Rochdale and the development of what we know with the Rooley Moor pits here. Hunger Hill, why is it called Hunger Hill? Well, I can assure you it's nought at all to do with the cotton famine. Well, that name is blooming interesting, isn't it? Now, as we know, much of Rossendale, well, all of Rossendale really, was a forest. It was known as the Forest of Rossendale. It came under forest laws, it was a hunting ground. And then when the abbeys kind of got dissolved, when Henry kind of shut them, well, Henry took over those areas. And it then became his hunting grounds, really. But quite a lot of it started to get sold off. And in 1541, thereabouts, he sold great portions of it off to the Holt family. Thomas Holt from Grizzlehurst bought a big plot of land at that time for £641. And again, it was opened up for the wool trade, sheep grazing and so forth. But on this side, on the Rochdale side, again, it became crown lands. Obviously, Rochdale was royal crown lands. But a lot of it was rented to John Byron, who became the first Lord Byron. And they were from down Newstead Abbey, but he owned great lands up here. Well, he rented them for a start of Queen Elizabeth. And in 1588, she wanted him to do a big survey of the land to find out what collieries and coal pits and other valuable things were working along in the wastelands. A further survey was done in, I think it was 1626, and we find pits working up, well, when we say pits, there was coal mines working up on Naden Head there. Again, Naden Head, according to Steve Mendelsohn, that also could have great history about it. It could be a Viking thing, which was like a Viking meeting place. Anyway, that's for another time. So Byron held these lands down here, while on the other side, even though that was still Scotland, they were kind of being rented out to different land, well, bought by different landowners. So let's concentrate on this side of the hillside, shall we? In 1751, we get, who is it? It's John Lomax, who gets a lease over on Knoll Hill, which isn't a million miles away from here. It's, like I said, it's the funny shaped hill just over there. Then in 1766, we get Simon Dearden and Mary Lomax. They've possibly got the leases, and I think it again is on Knoll Hill. But when do we get something a bit more hard and fast about Hunger Hill here on Shore Moor? 1784. Then we get Simon Dearden and John Lomax getting the lease for all the mines under Shore Moor and Hunger Hill. And then we know about that lease that was signed, or they bought the mineral rights of William the Devil Byron round about 1797, 95, 97. I actually have seen the documents, so I'll look that up for sure. So they were definitely here. So the leasees that we're talking about with this particular pit that's down near Shawclough there, near Smallshire Mill, sorry, not Shawclough, it is most likely then the Lomaxes. And it looks like there's a bit of a royal battle going on between those that have the lease on the manor and those on the fringes of the manor are on other manors that have got freehold rights to work the coal. And from that, we don't have any idea as yet who that was and anything else about this dispute, just what is on this particular document. And this lodge here at the side of us originally was a catchment water for the pits further down, but it was used to sabotage the Freeholders collieries. They dug a leap from here onto the other side of Rooley Moor Road and poured water down into where the Freeholders were working. The Freeholders in turn, what they did, they hauled in to the workings of the lessees, and they sent the water into their workings, which is where we get to those two shafts by the side of Smallshire Dam, because they were kind of inundated by the water. And beyond that, we really know absolutely nothing, apart from the fact that the Deardens and the Lomaxes carried on here for nearly over a further 100 years. Now the Deardens became actual lords of the manor of Rochdale in the 1820s. There was a big court case, and I need to investigate it more and know my stuff a lot more before I talk about it on here. But by that time, the Lord Byron was the poet. And he was sick and fed up of this legal wrangling and wanted rid of it. But the fact that they bought the mineral rights in the 1790s, again, was all under question. They'd underpaid. They said they'd paid for more. They had the actual rights. It's a big, complicated legal dispute. And as yet, I don't fully understand it. And if somebody does, please get in touch and try and help and explain. Now, the Lomaxes and the Deardens, they were hand in hand for hundreds of years. The Lomaxes really were the Deardens' mineral agents. They were the right-hand men for the Lord of the Manor, who was hardly ever here in the first place. They shared the same offices down at the Orchard in Rochdale, and the Lomaxes ran and produced lots of coal themselves under lease. And it seems a very complicated system and setup, some of the ways they worked and the dealings. It looks a real interesting story to look into. But this is a start, and if anybody can help me, please get in touch. So what we'll do, I intend to have a look across now and see if I can find where the Freeholders shaft was, where they were setting the water down. And then we'll take it from there, really. Right, so you can see behind me, we do have a capped shaft. And I can't say for definite which shaft this is. Did this belong to the Freeholders, or was this the lessees? I mean, this area's all been quarried away now over the last 100 years. Now, to be honest, I think what we need is Desi to get up in the air when, maybe back end September, when the sun's low and the vegetation is down, and have a really good look and try and work this one out. It's not going to be that straightforward and easy. Now then, right behind us, if we look, you can just see the pylons sort of behind. And up there, that is really where a lot of the lease coal was worked, and we're going back, it says in the last 60 years. So obviously, well, there's no obviously about it. It's most likely the Lomaxes that are working it for the last 60 years. So that's taken us back to the 1760s more than likely. So between here and Snipe Barn. And if you have a look, they've even named the shafts. So even though we can't solve the mystery, it is a fantastic insight for the time being into Rooley Moor Colliery from the 1760s to this particular time period of the the first couple of decades of the 1800s. And then we're going to look again how it developed from then on in. But information is thin on the ground. We're struggling for information even about the owners. So I hope you've enjoyed our little bit of a look around here, and as we go back to the van, I'll just explain a little bit more, perhaps about Rooley Moor Road, so we can get something going for another discussion, because I think it's really interesting, and we need to dig deeper, not just keep on the surface. That I'm talking now about the time of the 1860s and the cotton famine. When we learnt industrial history or industrial and social history at school, we learnt it in chunks as though they were standalone events, like we learned about Peterloo. And then you kind of learn about the plug riots, which really was a general strike in in the 1840s, and then you get on to the cotton famine and the corn laws and all this sort of stuff as though they were separate, but they weren't. They were all one continuous timeline. And I find it interesting when you get up to the 1760s that a lot of the rebellion and the radicalness and this let's stand up for our not stand up for our rights, that's wrong. What they tried to do from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution was adapt to this new industrial system for the people. They wanted representation in Parliament, they wanted a voice, and that's what a lot of these instances were about. Getting a voice and not having to pay, well, bread, which was a basic staple, being at a price that people couldn't afford to pay. That people were starving, they were working 6 days a week. Many times they were on short time because the economy was boom and bust, and they were having a hard time. But it's interesting, after those 1860s, it's like a new generation has come along and a different attitude's adopted. So as we walk back to the van, I'll just give my 10penneth about the goings on roundabout of 1860 and why we get the Cotton Famine Road and why it's sort of famous today. It's interesting, and it is a good thing that it's been brought to the national and maybe international attention. Right, so Rooley Moor Road then, and the Cotton Famine. What's the backstory? Well, obviously we know that the cotton famine really affected Lancashire and Yorkshire, the textile industry, the textile producing districts of the north of England, and it was put down to the obviously the American Civil War. But there's more to it than that. When you start to dig, you've got to dig deep to these things. Now, in the years from like 1855 up until 1860, cotton production was really going at a pace, to the point in 1860 they'd really overproduced, they'd flooded the markets. So there was going to be a depression in the cotton industry anyway. That was already on the cards. So the American Civil War had started. Now, it's a misconception that it was all about slavery, because when Lincoln got things going, it took him 12 months to decide that slavery was an issue, and it could be argued that he brought that in for propaganda. Now, I'm not an expert on that, these are things I'm still looking into, but we all know that one of the first victims of war is the truth. But nevertheless, people rallied round that, and slavery was a big issue. There's absolutely no denying that. It was abhorrent what was going on, totally abhorrent, and nobody, or very few people in Lancashire, certainly amongst the working people, agreed with slavery at all. Now, it's where we draw the line on slavery. Of course, what went on with the working men of England wasn't officially slavery. Of course it wasn't. There's a big difference. But there's also a point where people find themselves in a situation that they can't ever get out of, that they've no means of getting out of that particular situation. Now, even though it's not down as slavery, and I'm not going to say it's as good as, because you have certain freedoms, what they are I don't know, but it comes pretty close. And certainly when we're talking about children who were bound as apprentices and who were bound in the mills and in the pits and things like that. And on Rooley Moor Road, certainly many children under the ages of 7 were killed in these collieries up here. So we haven't got slavery, but we've certainly got, to a massive extent, social injustice. And it's up here on Rooley Moor. Back in 1842 there was a horrendous case of one young 12-year-old who lived in Castleton, apprenticed to a man, a collier from Woodhouse Lane, who worked on a colliery on Rooley Moor Road and was almost beaten to death, till at the final count he was put on a cart and sent home to his mum, more or less in a dead situation. Because a thing that I've thought about as well, stand up against the what's going on in the cotton famine, and don't buy cotton from slaves, from slave plantations. But did they have the same boycotting attitude towards tobacco plantations? Did everybody in East Lancashire and South Lancashire stop smoking? Did everybody stop having sugar products, because of the sugar plantations? Interesting questions. What about the mill owners in Rochdale, the Brights themselves? What were their mills like? There wasn't a new Lanark of Rochdale. There wasn't a Bourneville or a Saltaire in Rochdale. the Brights factory workers were no better treated than anybody else. So it's good to have ideals, but where do these ideals work out at home? These are interesting questions to ask when we're investigating history, and it's not like I'm pointing my finger at anybody, I'm not. It's just a case of getting a full, complete picture and asking some inconvenient questions as well.